Welcome to the Bird Podcast. I'm Shobha Narayan. Our guest today is Judith Mirembe, who is currently based in Uganda. Judith is a bird guide and a researcher with a passion for birds, keen on their conservation as well as their protection of their habitats. This passion steps back to when she was a child and she learned birds in her local language and appreciated the cultural stories attached to them. Judith is the chairperson of the Uganda Women Birders Club that she started in 2013 as an initiative to introduce women to birdwatching, a profession that, much like everywhere else, is dominated by men in Africa. This passion led her to start a nonprofit organization, Shoebill-Watch Uganda, whose main aim is to protect the shoebill and other bird species in Uganda. We are going to be putting a lot of links about Judith and her extended bio in the show notes section of the episode. But for now, let me welcome Ms. Mirembe. Thank you for participating in the Bird Podcast.
Thank you, Shobha. I'm happy to be here. You can call me Judith.
Thank you. Thank you. Judith, for those of us who are very interested in you and your country, can you tell us a little bit about you and how you got into bird watching?
So I started bird watching when I was very young. In Africa, birds are part of the culture. They're part of the stories that we hear from our parents, from our elder siblings, and we get to love the birds and attach them to culture stories. So I got into serious birding later on. My dad passed on and I had to live with another family. So I was taken on by my guardian, and my guardian is a bird watcher, Herbert Biarhanga. So they looked after me since I was a kid. And since he was a bird watcher and he had 4 boys, his kids are all boys. So we all got to go out for bird watching because we had to go over the weekends, sometimes during holidays. In the start, it was just for fun, go out, meet new friends, have snacks. And then later when I joined the university, I was offered a course in, it was a bachelor's in environmental science. Some of the things that I saw in the field was starting to match what I was learning in class. I realized most of the things were matching, things to do with vertebrates, ecology, looking at the plants. All this was somehow matching up with what I was doing in bird watching. So at the university, I got serious with bird watching. I would use my weekends for birding excursions. We would go out as a group with the other bird guides in Uganda and general nature enthusiasts. When I got done with university, of course, that is when you realize that the jobs are not there. The jobs are few, and the world now favors more job creators than seekers. So then I realized I had to start somewhere. And oftentimes we start the jobs we do, where we start from is what we are largely taught by our parents or guardians. So I got more serious with bird watching and I wanted to start leading tours. So I had good training with Bird Uganda safaris. They took me on for internship as their guide. And then later on, I also had an opportunity to have internship with Nature Uganda, the Birdlife International Partner in Uganda. And Nature Uganda basically does is conservation of birds and their habitats. So I got interested, I wrote a few projects, and I was taken on by the Zoological Society of London. I won a fellowship in 2017 to 2019, and I did research on the shoebill, what now largely defines the work that I do. So that's just a little bit about myself, and I know I've said a lot.
Not at all. In fact, I wanted to ask you, the photo that we have in your episode is going to be of you carrying a beautiful little girl. Is she
Yeah.
related to you?
Yes. The beautiful little girl I'm carrying is she's my daughter. I she's my firstborn, and of course, being that I cannot stop working because I have a baby, I take her on my field trips. I go with her since she's still independent. Since she's still dependent until she starts to stay on her own. And yeah, she has to get to know what I do. And I want her to be just like I am, or even better than me. So I would rather she started earlier than I started, so that she would probably be much better than I am and make bigger milestones.
I was going to ask you if you are still in college, Judith, because you look so young, but I guess you're a mom.
I am I just finished my master's. I graduated in May this year, and I'm probably looking around for a PhD opportunity if I had one, and of course it is still related to the work that I'm doing on the shoebill conservation, I would definitely go for it.
So, which brings us to the first birding question. I've never had the pleasure of coming to Africa or Uganda. What
Yeah.
can I expect to see there? What can people expect? What are some of your signature birds?
So Uganda has about 1,080 species of birds, and that accounts for at least 50% of Africa's bird population. Wow. And accounts for at least 11% of the global bird species, which makes it very rich, comparable to its size. The birds are beautiful, they are colorful, and easy to see. So all these birds are spread in different habitats. My top 5 of the birds to see in Uganda, the first one would definitely be the shoebill, my favorite. The second one would be the gray-crowned crane. That is the Uganda national bird. The third would be the great blue Turaco. It's very beautiful with really nice colors. The fourth would be the Fox's weaver. The Fox's weaver is Uganda's only endemic bird. And my fifth would be okay, this is hard. My fifth would be the regal sunbird.
The regal sunbird. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it tiny like the sunbirds we have in India? Or,
yes, it is. It is tiny and very colorful.
Okay. I'm curious, you didn't mention any raptors, but I guess
the raptor that I would probably want people to see is the long-crested eagle.
So,
yeah,
like the name, it has a long crest. I've never seen it.
Yeah. It does have a long crest. It's largely black with a deep yellow eye, and it has a lot of attachments, cultural attachments to it. So talking about the story of the long-crested eagle would definitely be captivating and interesting.
Please tell us about that. One of my questions was going to be the cultural stories linked to birds.
So there are a number of cultural stories linked to birds. Like in Uganda, we have tribes. So some of the tribes find birds and other wildlife significant in their culture. They call them totems. And growing up, you know, a totem is something that you cannot eat. You give it high amount of respect, and you know you cannot eat it. So that is how largely explains how wildlife has survived in Uganda and largely Africa for a long time because of the cultural attachments we have. For example, the long-crested eagle. So a lot of cultures in Uganda, the long-crested eagle has a long crest, and oftentimes people would ask a long-crested eagle from which direction they will get a partner. So depending on the direction where it looks, that's where your partner will come from. And people found all this to be true. And then again, you would ask the long-crested eagle whether you will die or have a long life. If it looks down, it means you'll have a short life. If it looks up, you'll have a long life. And then we have a number of owls, and many people link owls to bad omen. So they believe each time you hear an owl calling, someone in your family is going to die, a neighbor is going to die. And oftentimes, each time they had an owl, even up to now, they would make sure they chase it away because it's believed to be bad omen. And then we have birds like the white-browed cuckoo. Cuckoos are generally believed when they call to be a sign of rain. So when a cuckoo calls, you know there is rain, the season is about to start, and all that. So there are very many birds with different attachments depending on the different cultures, the different cultural aspects of people in Uganda.
So the guest before you in our podcast was Dr. Samira Agnihotri. Samira works with tribals in the state that I live in, and the tribes there believe that if a woodpecker calls, it's a particular woodpecker in that region, they will not go in that direction in the forest because it's as you say, it's an omen for danger. Maybe an elephant is there, somebody is going to die. So they say we will not go on the route. And then the other thing that you might find interesting is there is a bird, the crake. There's a bird, a crake in the BR Hills where Samira works. And if it calls in a certain way from the ground, it means there's going to be a lot of rain. Whereas if it flies and calls, the rain will be less. So we also have these kind of traditions. But can you paint us and give us an idea of the types of habitats that are there in Uganda? And I want to clarify, I was reading up, it said Uganda has 1032 species, but you said a different number, which is 1080 number of species. Okay, you got it. That's fine. And if you can tell us about the different habitats that are there in Uganda.
So the number of species is subject to many things.
Yes.
We have the East African Rarities Committee, which sits in Kenya. So once a new species is seen, it's supposed to be submitted to the East African Rarities Committee to add it on the Ugandan official list. Yes. And then we have organizations like Nature Uganda, which also have their own lists. We have Uganda Wildlife Authority, and most of these organizations, their lists tend to be a few species, less of the bird guides. So the Bird Guides Club will put the number at 1080, while Nature Uganda and Uganda Wildlife Authority, or what is published, is 1057.
Okay.
So the habitats we have, our water, most of the water here is freshwater. We have freshwater lakes. So freshwater, we have wetlands. Those would also be freshwater wetlands. We have forests. The forests, we have tropical rainforests like the Bwindi Impenetrable. We have the Budongo forest. We have Ichuya forest. We have, there are quite a number of them. Then we have central forest reserves. And then we have, of course, cultivated areas are also very good habitats for birds, especially the garden birds. Then we have savannas. We have a savanna grasslands, like the Queen Elizabeth National Park, partly Lake Mburo National Park. Then we have savanna woodlands, that would be Chidepo Valley National Park. So all these, some of the places you find there's more than one habitat. You have a number of microhabitats within the same habitat. So I would give a general bit. So we have 10 national parks. We have 12 wildlife reserves. We have 34 important bird areas. Then we have 12 Ramsar sites. Ramsar sites are wetlands of international importance. Those would be majorly wetlands. So all these, there are quite many. The habitats are quite diverse, from forests to freshwater lakes to wetlands to grasslands and cultivated areas.
I didn't know Uganda had 50% of Africa's bird population, and that's incredible. Is that because of the geography or because the people of Uganda have preserved more species? What do you think? Why is that?
So it's a continuum of factors. First of all, the geography, the location of Uganda astride the equator. And again, Uganda happens to have one of the richest biodiversity areas. That would be the Albertine Rift. So there's quite a large amount of species within the Albertine Rift. So the location, the geography, of course, conservation efforts have also largely been great, geared towards conservation. I would also find that the reason why the birds are still many, of course, the climate, and just a bit of everything.
Yeah. So let's come to your favorite bird, or what's special about the shoebill, and why have you started the conservation program that you did for the shoebill?
So the shoebill is it's a globally threatened species. It's vulnerable on the International Union of Conservation for Nature, the red list, the bird red list. And in Uganda, our national red list puts it as endangered, puts the status as endangered. So the shoebill is found in a few countries in Africa, about 8 countries. This would be Southern Sudan, Ethiopia, Uganda, Zambia, Tanzania. It has been seen in Kenya as a vagrant. You can find it in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I think I've mentioned almost all of them. So it is found in only those countries in Africa, and it inhabits undisturbed freshwater wetlands. So again, the population is has been reducing over the years because of the many threats it is faced with. Among the threats is people are hunting it down for to sell it for pet trade, illegal pet trade, because an individual shoebill can cost even as much as $20,000 US. So people want to sell them to zoos and other people to keep them just for pleasure and entertainment. And then the other threat largely is human disturbance. Human disturbance can be for the habitat. People are converting the wetlands for agriculture, for settlement, for industries, and all this reduces the habitat of the shoebill. And then, of course, pollution. But pollution is, at the moment, the effects have not yet aggravated, but it's a potential threat that is growing over time. And habitat destruction, like fires that are set up. So again, there's an issue. There's a small antelope that stays within wetlands, the statunga. And as the statungas, people burn down the vegetation so that new vegetation can sprout for the statungas to feed on. And most times these fires, once they are lit, they can easily spread and destroy big chunks of the shoebill habitat.
Okay.
And also fishing is becoming a big threat because the fishermen are competing for fish with the shoebill. They tend to hunt in the same areas where the shoebills are feeding, and yet the shoebills need minimal disturbance. So they tend to give it a hard time, and probably they fly off or look for another wetland. The other bit about the shoebill, what makes it special is it's a large bird, and looking at such a large bird in a wetland habitat, walking on floating vegetation, wading through, it is quite amazing. It's captivating, and yeah, those are some of the things that I find special about the shoebill. Of course, the look itself, looking at the prehistoric nature and appearance, it's just a bird.
You have it. I made you bring down the camera, but can you just lift up the computer, show it? It's just behind you. Oh yeah, look at that. Huh? That. And talk about its behavior a little bit while holding. If you don't mind, just hold it up so we can see it. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
So shoebills are they lay 1 to 2 eggs. In rare cases, they lay 3 eggs. And these eggs are laid with an interval of at least 5 days between. Incubation starts right away after the first egg is laid. And the roles are played by both the parents, the male and the female. So the first egg that was hatched out the first egg that was laid tends to hatch out before the others. And the chick, of course, is aggressive and has more energy because of competition, tends to kill off the other chick in a sibling rivalry called siblicide. So oftentimes a shoebill is only able to raise 1 chick at a time. The males and the females are largely similar, and oftentimes if you don't find them together, you cannot differentiate between the sexes. They become sexually mature at about 3 or 4 years. That is when they start breeding. They inhabit wetlands, freshwater wetlands. They feed majorly on fish, other aquatic life like toads, frogs, water snakes, small crocodiles. And then they're feeding, the wetland habitat in which they stay, the feeding is majorly done in short vegetation because their wingspan is so large that if they're flying in tall vegetation, they would be distracted by the tall vegetation. So they prefer to feed in short vegetation. And in the vegetation where they feed, this vegetation it is poorly oxygenated. The area is poorly oxygenated. So when fish come out to gallop for air, then the shoebill strikes. And the bit about the hunting behavior is that there are 2 tactics. The first tactic is to stand and wait for the prey to come, and then it strikes. The other tactic is walk around an area slowly stalking the fish until it has an opportunity. So that is a little bit about the shoebill behavior. Something else is the bill is largely where the name is derived from because it is a shoe-shaped bill. So shoebills have been closely related from studies that have related them to pelicaniforms, and their closest relative is a hammercock.
Yes, also found in your country.
Yes, also found in Africa, and a number of sightings in Uganda. So initially people called it a shoebill stork, a stork, because of the appearance. It looks like a stork if you look at any other storks, but the closest relative is a hammercock, genetically related. It has a hooked bill, and it uses the hook for decapitating prey. They swallow prey whole. So when it gets a fish, they use that hook to crush the bones and also give them a firm grip on slippery prey, and then eventually they swallow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please talk about other birds too, like you have ground dwelling birds like ostriches, which we don't have, and then the hammerkop, of course. And what else? Yeah, that would be a start. And
So
please go ahead.
the ostriches,
Yeah.
the ostriches, we have them in the northeastern part of Uganda. That would be Kidepo Valley National Park, in the Pianupe Wildlife Reserve, Matheniko Wildlife Reserve. That would be the northeastern part of Uganda. And the other one was
The hammerkop.
So the hammerkop is among the birds in Uganda that build the biggest nests. It is a small brown, not small, it's medium size. And of course, the name is derived from the hammerhead, which is the hammerkop. It also feeds largely on fish, snakes, toads, frogs. It is widely spread in Uganda. You'd find it in many parts of Uganda. And then you have, so the hammerkop is believed to make a nest which has two entrances. It has an entrance and an exit. And and again, it is believed that the hammerkop is so organized that in the nest, it will construct the nest and give it different portions. So there is a living room, there's a children's room, there is a So the other interesting bird is the gray-crowned crane. The gray-crowned crane, also known as the crested crane,
yes,
is the national bird of Uganda because it has the colors of the Ugandan flag. And the other interesting bit about the gray-crowned crane is that they flock when they are feeding, but when they are nesting, they nest singly. They feed on grass heads, they feed on insects. They're also globally threatened, largely because their principal habitat, which are wetlands, are under threat by humans. They are monogamous, and they will always fly in pairs. Most of the times you find them in pairs. I don't remember the other bird you mentioned.
So we talked about ostriches, we talked about gray-crowned crane. I wanted to ask you if there are, again, folk beliefs associated with this bird. And you said, I wanted to ask you why Uganda chose this as a national bird. And you said it's the color of the national flag.
Yeah.
But is there any, like in India, cranes are associated with fidelity because they stay together for life. So it's linked to. Judith, may I request you to now just lower the computer so we see a little bit more of you? Yeah, thank you.
So actually what you've said about the crane is also true for Uganda. I've had a number of interactions with communities. While I was at Nature Uganda, I was the coordinator for bird population monitoring. And this is largely citizen science. So I had a lot of interaction with communities. And among the things that I learned was that people are starting to harvest the eggs of a gray-crowned crane because they believe it's a sign of fidelity. If you eat those eggs, you can keep your partner, you can keep together in harmony. And yes, so that is another threat that is emerging for the cranes, because people are finding the eggs something good.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And are ostriches scary birds, having never encountered them in the wild?
The appearance is scary, but like any wildlife, you cannot predict it. So our ostriches, unfortunately, the area they are in is a habitat to many other dangerous wildlife, lions, leopards, cheetahs, elephants. So you cannot approach them on foot. You're always in a vehicle. It's a game drive through the park. So I cannot tell whether they're aggressive or myself have not approached them on foot. But they're just looking at their appearance, just like the shoebill, they are very aggressive. But of course, like any other birds, they fear humans more than we fear them.
India's national bird is the great Indian bustard. I know you have bustards in Uganda as well. Can you talk a little bit about them?
We have bustards. I think there are about 3 or 4 species. We have the Kori bustard, we have the Denham's bustard, we have the black-bellied bustard, and I need to remember the other. So most of these bustards are found in the Savannah National Parks. That is Machon Falls, Queen Elizabeth National Park, Lake Umburo National Park, Kidepo Valley National Park, and the other Savannah parks.
So in grassland?
So yes, in grasslands. I've not heard of anything associated with bustards. To us, they're just bustards. They're birds. They have no problems. I've not heard of any stories associated with them. Yeah.
So in India, they are under a great deal of threat because one of the desert national park where they inhabit, there's a lot of windmills. And so we did an episode where we interviewed the people who are trying to increase the population of the bustard. And they have a lot of problems because first the bustard, when it flies into the windmill and then it lays eggs on the ground. So it abandons the nest when there are people around. Sometimes cattle walk through the same nesting sites. So it's a very sensitive and it's a very sensitive bird. So it's doesn't do well with human inhabitation. So we are having a lot of trouble with it.
That's right.
Yeah. What about raptors of Uganda? Which ones do you like, or any one that?
We have a number of raptors. I think I like all of them. The common ones that you can find would be the long-crested eagle, the lizard buzzard. The lizard buzzard majorly feeds on snakes, feeds on lizards, on frogs, and you'd often find it around cultivated areas. Then there's the African harrier hawk. In South Africa, they call it a gymnogene. That is also very widely spread. Then we have the kite, the black kite and the yellow-billed kite. They're also quite widely spread. And then we have the vultures, but vultures are scavengers anyway. So the raptor population is it is not a threat, apart from the vultures that have died at killings of animals, because when people poison, there's been a bit of conflict between communities living around the national parks because of the animals preying on their livestock. And so sometimes they poison the animals, and when the animals die of the poison and then the vultures come and feed on them, the vultures also die.
Yeah.
But those cases are not very many. It's once in a while. So the raptors, I would say, are not really under threat. We don't hunt them down.
Here in India, we had a huge problem because a drug called diclofenac was given to the cattle, which was to help them with whenever it was to, I think it was a pain medicine, but then it was extremely poisonous to the vultures. So when the cattle died, the vultures would eat it and they started dying. So now there's a big conservation exercise in telling the farmers, do not, you can substitute some other drug for diclofenac and then to increase the vulture populations in India. So we have that as well. Because you're near the equator, you mentioned the Turaco, but there are many beautiful and colorful birds. But would you like to talk about some of the ones you like?
So the Turacos, we have a number of Turacos. Some are specialized to live in forests, like the black-billed turaco. The Rwenzori turaco is an Albertine rift endemic. It is also specialized to live in forests. We have a great blue turaco, which is the more widely spread species you can find in cultivated gardens. You can find in forest edges. And then we have the Rossi's turaco. So turacos largely feed on fruit, and they can easily be located by, they have loud calls. They call very loudly. So you just have to hear the call and look for the fruiting tree around. So those are our turacos. They love fruit, and the fruiting seasons really favor they favor them a lot.
Just a brief word about hornbills, and then I wanted to ask you about why you started Uganda Women Birders. You have a few hornbill species, I think, right?
Yeah, we have a number of hornbill species. They should be over maybe 10 or 13.
Oh.
And the hornbills, we have the majority of the hornbills, which are forest interior species, are found in the Semeliki Forest National Park, which attracts part of the Congo biome species and Guinea. So the hornbills also largely feed on fruit. The commonest is the black and white casqued hornbill, can be found in cultivated areas, feeding on bananas, feeding on fruit like guava, excuse me, feeding on the ficus fruits. And hornbills nest in tree cavities. So when they make the cavity, and then they can use recycle a nest over and over again. I've seen this happening at Nchima Forest Lodge. This is very close to Mabamba. So they make a cavity on a tree, then one goes in, for example, a female goes in, and then they seal off the rest of the nest with mud and leave just a small entrance where food can be, where the other partner can bring food through which it can give food to the ones inside, let's say the female and the young. So hornbills are quite, they're really nice birds, though they can get noisy. Yeah. The other hornbill species that we have is the crowned hornbill, the African pied hornbill. When you get to Semeliki, you have the dwarf hornbills, you have the white-thighed hornbills, and many others.
One of our guests is a specialist on hornbills. Her name is Dr. Aparajita Datta, and she researches them in the northeast part of India. And India too has about, I think we have 9 hornbills. That's what she said, but you have more. I didn't know that. And one of our guests who introduced you to us, Dr. Nancy Jacobs, was talking about the ground hornbill and how it is called lightning bird in some of Africa.
Yeah, we also have the ground hornbills, the Abyssinian ground hornbills.
They also probably look really prehistoric, isn't it?
Yes, they do.
So the last 2 questions, one is, why did you start Uganda Women Birders? And then tell us about the conservation efforts that are happening in Africa.
So the Uganda Women Birders, we started it in 2013. So 2013, I was at the university, and I was getting deeply interested in bird watching. I was being trained by Bird Uganda Safaris, and together with Herbert had worked in the birdwatching industry for a long time, and he had also seen the gap of women. So when I also started getting into birdwatching deeply, I realized there were very few women that were doing birdwatching, and yet tourism is one of the biggest foreign earners for Uganda, foreign exchange earners. and employs quite a number of people, especially the youth. So looking at the women being few, we thought we would start an organization, which is the Uganda Women Birders. And we started with a very few ladies that were already established in the industry. They did not necessarily have to be bird watchers. We just wanted, for the start, we needed a group of ladies who were planning to work with to inspire the other women to join. Because in most parts of the world, women have a better touch on fellow women. A woman can easily convince a fellow woman to join a profession because we largely look at, is it possible? Has someone else done it before? Can I also do it like they do? So that is always the starting point. So when we got these 10 ladies, we would have weekend excursions. Sometimes these were sponsored. This would be sponsored, transport, and maybe have a few snacks for the team to subsidize it for people to participate. Largely, the membership that we're getting were students that had just graduated from the university and at that time have no job. So we felt the club would provide a platform for women to learn birdwatching. We would be able to attract support in form of equipment, which is our biggest challenge. Would be able to attract equipment, attract finance, apply for training opportunities so that the ladies can participate and benefit. Later in 2015, we were able to get 15 pair of binoculars from the Uganda Wildlife Authority, and these we would lend out to the ladies to use for bird watching, and then they return at the end of the excursion. And we would as well give some pairs to the other ladies to keep using. Once they buy their own, they return them. We're also able to get guidebooks, and all this support was we were getting it from within Uganda and outside Uganda. For birdwatchers that would come to Uganda, would donate their old pair of binoculars or any birding gear that they did not use at the moment. And the club has grown. We are now over 60 members. We have seen the number of women getting jobs increasing. For example, Abia, I know you're planning to talk to her. Abia is one of those products. And we are happy to see the numbers growing, although some come in and drop off along the way, but we keep going, and we're happy to see the progress. The other bit that really makes us happy as a club is we've been able to inspire the start of similar clubs in Rwanda. And they started the Rwanda Women Birders in 2017 or 18, I don't remember. And then Kenya also started the Kenya Women Birders, inspired by us in 2019. I need to remember very well. So seeing all this coming up, we are looking at forming a bigger network of the East African women birders. And who knows, in a few years, we can form even a bigger one of the African Women Birders Association, so that we're able to exchange knowledge, we're able to share experiences and learn from one another.
That's amazing.
So, yeah. So the other bit that the club does is inspiring children, because children are always close to their mothers, is inspiring children, taking children out for outdoor activities, helping them learn about nature and bird conservation. Yeah.
That's, I mean, congratulations. I'm thrilled, and what an achievement.
Thanks.
So would I be correct in inferring that if Uganda is one of the highest bird population countries in Africa, would it be that Kenya and the other one, Rwanda, that you mentioned, would be the second and third highest countries in Africa with respect to the birding? Yeah, so which would be the top few countries for birding in Africa, I guess, is a good way to ask the question.
So Kenya and Tanzania, because of their size, they definitely have more bird species than Uganda. And excuse me, they're good bird watching hotspot. But again, all these areas within Africa, they have special birds where you can special birds that are seen within such areas. So for example, you would not find a shoebill in Kenya, and yet you have it in Uganda. There are also other species that you'd find in Kenya because of the special habitats they have that you will not find in Uganda. So the top bird watching areas in Africa, of course, I would say Uganda because I'm in Uganda, but areas like South Africa, areas like Kenya, areas like Tanzania, all those are good. Rwanda, Ethiopia, all those are good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And last question, Judith, I know you'd need, how many days do you need in Uganda to do justice to birding?
On average, for a bird watching tour, you need at least 14 to 16 days.
Okay. And if somebody was coming in on a business trip for 4 days, which area would you, and is a birder, which area would you direct them to go? For example, in India, we have Bharatpur in Rajasthan, where you can get a lot of different fascinating species. Where would you send them to?
So 4 days is enough to take you to at least 2 bird watching areas. For example, in 4 days, you could choose to do only Queen Elizabeth National Park. That is 3 days. So you need 2 travel days and 1 day of bird watching extensively. The same would be for Machon Falls National Park or even Semiliki Forest National Park. Because our airport is Entebbe, and from Entebbe to connect to all these areas, it's quite a distance. But again, if someone has a few days, there are a number of things you can do. For example, a trip to Mabamba, you only need a day to do a trip in Mabamba. So for 4 days, you can do Mabamba wetland and you proceed to Lake Mburu National Park. So those are 2 spots in 1 day. Sorry, in 4 days. You can also choose to do bird watching around the Entebbe area. Most of the areas in Uganda are very rich with birds and other biodiversity. So sometimes you don't really have to travel very far, unless if you're specifically interested in a given bird species. But if someone is after a list, Queen Elizabeth is good, Machon Falls is good. You can combine Lake Mburu with Mabamba. That is also good. Or you can combine Mabamba with Queen Elizabeth. Yeah.
Okay. This is great for our listeners. Judith Mirembe, I know that you told me you had the flu. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to the Bird Podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much for talking to me as well. I think you had asked about conservation efforts that.
Yes.
So conservation in Uganda is something that has grown over the years. And we have a number of organizations that are specifically targeting conservation of bird species. For example, Nature Uganda, the Birdlife International Partner, Shoebill-Watch Uganda, Wildlife Conservation Society, WWF, and many others. So some of the efforts, for example, the birdlife policies of setting up important bird areas, those have been very important in conservation of birds, because when a place is designated as an IBA, there is some kind of protection that is given to such a place. And also there are a number of regulations and restrictions. So you find that such a place is strictly protected for birds. And then again, there's a lot of research that is happening. And from the research, there is awareness that is created. Materials are published to create awareness about the threats. There's involvement of community. This is through citizen science, monitoring of bird species, and other forms of biodiversity. And then there's also, there are events like national events. Of course, there are also global ones like the Global Big Day, which everybody in the world is now getting excited about and taking place. Then in Uganda, we have the National Big Birding Day. Then we also have the African Birding Expo, which is running annually. We have the International Women Birders Conference, which is going to happen for the first time in 2023. So all these events bring out the importance of bird watching. They bring out the importance of birds. They create awareness about the threats that the birds are faced with, and all these are part of the conservation actions that are majorly towards realizing bird conservation in Uganda.
That's
and yeah.
Anything else?
No, I think that is it.
Thank you. I mean, that's a comprehensive answer, and I think we will try to link to all the names in the episode section so that people who want to look more into it can look into it. And specifically, we will link to the Uganda Women Birders Club, is it? Or Uganda Women Birders?
Uganda Women Birders. The event is the International Conference for Women Birders.
Yes. Okay. Judith, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for talking to me as well. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to many more episodes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bird Podcast is produced by Ullas Anand and Echo Edu. I'm Shobha Narayan. Thank you for listening.